an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 1, Episode 5, Mendings, Major and Minor. In this episode, in what I have to admit I see as a singular act of mercy, Pete and Marina wipe Julia's boyfriend's mind of all knowledge of her, releasing him forever from what was a downward spiral for sure, and I just hope that he is able to really get out. Also, Quentin finds out that his father has cancer, and I get my wish in terms of finally getting to see some of their relationship. It's not great, but it's not as bad as I kind of expected it to be. And there's this whole game thing, and I'm really interested to see whether or not this is a recurring thing or whether we're just going to get the one episode of it. I kind of want to see it played properly rather than just being one because Quentin goes a little bananas. But overall, I like this episode. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks again to Jessie for commissioning this episode. I am starting to feel like I'm getting the vibe of the show a little bit more under my feet. Jessie's here in the chat. Hello. And this one is like, you know, the whole thing, the conceit of the magic in this world is that it comes from pain. And I'm not entirely sure if I believe that or not. That's what we're being told by students. And I don't know if a teacher has said that. But this just goes to show, like, you know, my trust in authority figures, despite everything, is still probably too high. But I just kind of wonder if they're not misunderstanding it, because pain comes a lot of times from loss, which comes from love. And his pain is maybe bringing up some things that are going on with, you know, losing his relationship with his dad. So I don't know. I can't, like, just the idea of it just coming from pain for me feels a little bit like it's, sort of fetishizing pain in a way that makes it sound like if you don't have trauma, then you won't be able to do magic. And granted, we all have trauma, so I'm not trying to say that there's anybody out there who escapes pain and just wouldn't be able to do it. But it does feel like you would start to get into a pain Olympics sort of thing, where everybody's trying to outdo each other in order to somehow access magic, or to prove that they are more worthy than others to access that magic. But I guess we'll just see, like, sort of how that unfolds. This episode starts off with Quentin in the dean's office, and he wants to know what is going to happen to Julia. And this answers my question. You know, the whole thing last episode, I was wondering whether or not anyone was going to tell him, and then I was like, yeah, of course they will. They're not going to keep that from him. And it's interesting because you can tell by the way this goes, Quentin is not, I don't believe, interested in going after Julia himself. Now, that may have become something he thought about doing if it hadn't been for his dad getting sick and the news of that, like, totally distracting him and forcing him to reevaluate priorities. But it really feels in this scene like he wants somebody else to step in and punish her because he wants to see her get punished, but he doesn't want to be the one to do it because he wants to be able to observe her punishment without getting his own hands dirty. And I'm kind of delighted, in all honesty, that Dean Fogg is just like, Well, she's not on school grounds anymore. And, she wasn't supposed to be here. But you are also partially responsible in that you didn't tell us that she hadn't been wiped properly. So, I'm not, as he calls it, the magic police. What she decides to do on her time with her people, that's all her business. She tried to do something to you while you were on campus and she wasn't supposed to be here. And in that, I could do something. But she got out of here and she's not my headache anymore. So unless she comes back and tries to pull some shit here again, this is kind of your deal that you're going to have to figure out. And I, again, really enjoyed this because, like, with everything, even what he said, and I have to say, there's a moment when he asks, what are you going to do? And the dean just says, I'm going to kill her, with this deadpan face. And I cackled. Because when he said that, my immediate reaction was, what? And then I realized really quickly, like before Quentin did, that he was joking. And I started to just like laugh because I love the dean fucking with Quentin. Like, I just don't like Quentin to such a degree, even though I am definitely draw the line at what Julia actually did to him. That people fucking with him in general, I am 100% fine with. I just don't have a problem with it. Like, go off, So yeah, I really, really liked the way this whole scene went. And I like that there aren't any people who are like in positions of authority willing to step in on his behalf and save him, because they're just like, this isn't the equivalent of like a high school. You're in a graduate program. You're an adult. She's an adult. Y'all have to figure this shit out. So yeah, this is just, and also seeing Dean Fogg laugh because he's so serious so much of the time. I really do enjoy when he like gets any sort of humor out of anything. And he's like, well, you could erase her mind of magic all over again. And he's like, yeah. And then the buddies that she's hanging out with will just remind her of what it is and show her how to do it again. And then she'll come at me again because she doesn't remember how this went the first time. He's like, no, it's not going to solve anything. When she has found a group of people outside of the school that she can work with, that's just sort of, sealing the deal out of there. But yeah, what they do out there is none of my business and it's not yours. Hedge witches tend to crash and burn quite quickly all on their own. So we have a cut then to Julia, who is trying to get through Pete back into the building, saying, I want back the spells that they stole. And this is such an interesting concept to me, the idea that she can have all of the memories of doing magic, but she doesn't actually have the spells anymore. Like, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because I'm interpreting this, it sounds like crossing out those tattoos was somehow not just kicking her out of this crew, but also removing the memory of how to do certain spells entirely from her head. And I could be wrong about that, but that's the way it sounds here. I want the new ones she stole because I helped her. And he says they're locked in her filing cabinet, and even if I could, I wouldn't. Because I don't want to see you get hurt, and Marina will hurt you. You are not going to be as lucky as you were last time. Again, she only saved you because that was going to help her. And she starts to say something about how it was my friend that she used. And he stops her and says, your friend. As if to remind her, you sat down with her to torment him. Like, you trying to act like you're indignant on behalf of your friend is not fooling anybody. And I don't know why you think that was going to work on me, but I'm not a fucking idiot, which I really appreciated. I don't like Pete as a person, but I do appreciate how willing he is to call her out on her shit. Because Julia she's a character that I have a lot more patience for than I think I would have a few years ago if I had watched this. I feel like I would have just hated her and just been irritated with her. But when I think about the situation that she's in with a more compassionate eye, I immediately sort of have to step back and be like, yeah, this sucks. But at the same time, she is self-delusional. You know, she does that thing that we all do, which is tells herself a story to make herself feel better until she starts to believe it. And it's all too easy for some of us to buy into a story that makes us feel better when we want something bad enough. And the only thing that's getting in our way is the guilt, you know? So I like that she has somebody around to be like, no, I can see you starting to tell yourself something else was going on, but I was here, I saw it, I talked to you, I know what this was, and you're not going to try and rewrite history and pretend to me like I don't know. And you're not going to tell yourself like you don't know. So at this point, he's basically like, I know that this sucks, but you are going to have to get out of here before she spots you because this is just going to go so badly for you. So she leaves and then we cut to Alice, who I have to say is wearing the weirdest outfit in the world. It's kind of funny to me how normal a lot of like the outfits and whatnot in this show are, considering that it would be really easy to sort of make it like at least a little over the top because they're all magicians. But this outfit of Alice's is weird in a whole other way. This is not weird in a magician-y type of way. This is weird in a like, girl, did you just like pull whatever you found on the floor by your bed onto your body this morning? What is even happening here? She has like this t-shirt on underneath like a sundress, and over that this like big velour cardigan thing. It's just a weird, you know, and she's like working on this herb farm. And I don't know if this is like her home or because we don't really get, he says, I understand why you felt the need to stay here. This is, Dean Fogg talking to her. But this is just one small corner of the world. I would really like to have you back. There's a lot more to see. So they don't really address exactly where she is. They just talk about the fact that she's not at school. And she says, I haven't really liked the corners of the world that I have seen. And also, it's weird for you to act like you want me back so bad after you failed to even extend an invitation to me to take the entrance examinations in the first place. And you can see him look rather ashamed of himself. And he finally admits to her, I was feeling really guilty about your brother's death. And I blamed myself. And I felt like I was just going to be inviting another tragedy on your family if I let you come to this school. I didn't want to have to go through this again. But it was wrong of me. You're very talented. And you definitely should be at the school. And I made a mistake. And he tells her, if you don't like it, please, by all means, be a farmhand. So she does decide to come back. And there's a weird sort of like, you know, water under the bridge thing that goes on between her and Quentin. Because Quentin says to her, if I were you, I wouldn't even be talking to me. But she says, I just have to kind of come to terms with the fact that my brother has been dead for a while. Like, she's trying to tell him, I don't blame you. And I have to admit that what I was trying to do wasn't working. And I admire that because, you know, when you want something bad enough and when it concerns somebody that you care about, which she clearly cared about her brother, it's so difficult to let go of the hope that you had about what the way something was going to go. And I would not really, I won't say I wouldn't blame her, but I'd really understand if she just decided to kind of like hold Quentin responsible and stay. Like, it wouldn't be the right thing to do. It wouldn't be honest, but it would really make sense in its way. And I appreciate that we're not going to, like, you know, beat a dead horse with this and that we're moving past it. So this week, we're going to win the Alumni Week Hunger Games. My mentor last year was a nun. Never again. So this is the start of this whole other thing with break bills. And the name of this is called Welters, which I'd love to know where the name of this game came from. But what it is supposed to be is a combination of a competition between the different houses of the school to prove themselves at being adept at not only casting, but also adapting whatever they were about to cast to the situation. And I'm not going to pretend that I understand this game any better than, you know, what this show has, like, the show didn't really explain it very much at all. All we see eventually when they show up to the Welter's court is what I'll call it. It's set up a lot like a chessboard. There's a bunch of different squares, and each of them has engravings on them that mean nothing to me as a viewer, but obviously mean something to them. And they have to try and take the square. And by take the square, it's like, it seems that each of these squares has embedded in it a what's the word I want? A result that is supposed to occur. So we see that one girl trying to bring a living vine up out of the square, but eventually it sort of stops growing, shivers, and then collapses into dust. But you can imagine if she had succeeded, it would probably explode into this bloom, right? Like, it would probably be this beautiful thing. And she just doesn't quite get there. And then later on, there's a thing with, what is it? There's an animal that one of them is able to pull up, an iguana or something. But there's all these different things that I believe are basically small puzzles, and the answers don't have any relation to one another as far as I can tell. It's not like we have a theme going here. It's just, you know, a bunch of different random puzzles that you're supposed to try and solve with your team. And this is done in front of an audience. So you are meant to sort of impress people who can be your mentor. And one of them will spot your talent and approach you. And this is meant to sort of set you up for later on. So we're not there yet. Right now, we're at the cocktail hour, basically, that's out in the garden. Everybody is dressed very nicely. Everybody has a glass of wine in their hands. And Quentin is talking to Dr. Mears, I think is her name. Am I right about this? And she is telling him about the various things that she can do to the human body. And I guess it's weird because all of the students seem like they are trying to earn a mentor, but this doctor seems to be approaching Quentin about being his mentor, like, sort of, it feels like she's offering up herself and then he gets to choose, which doesn't seem like the situation for most of the other kids. And considering that they haven't even nailed down a house for Quentin to join, I don't know what it is about him that drew her. Or maybe it's just teachers going around and just explaining what they have to offer, but they're not actually offering. They are saying, here is what I could offer you were I to choose you. So I want you to keep that in mind. And then eventually, if you have more than one teacher offering, you will know the difference between us. And Alice arrives, and she is with her, I believe, aunt, Genji. This woman is wearing an amazing turban. She's got this, like, pink floor-length coat and lime green gloves, and her turban is this, like, fuchsia. She just has this look, and Margot and Elliot come prancing up, very excited, and look at Alice like they didn't realize who she was, what she could do for them, and that they kind of regret acting toward her the way they have because she is useful. It's a little bit gross, to be honest. And Margot's explains because of course Quentin doesn't know who this woman is. She says she runs a retreat. It's like Camp David for magicians. If Camp David was run by Caligula, Elliot finishes. And Alice sort of tosses her head and looks at him, and he catches himself and says, I mean that in the best way. And then immediately backs off and says, excuse me. It's pretty amusing, to be honest. But this is the moment of apology from Quentin to Alice. Alice looks weird in this scene to me because she doesn't have her glasses on, and I feel like it might be the first time we've seen her without them, but her eyes are very swollen in this scene, like she had been crying, and I wonder if they like purposely took her glasses off because she was having, as an actress, a day of swelling, and they were like, oh, that's really good. You look like you've been grieving. Let's take this. But yeah, so then we get our intro to Break Bill's Mad Eye Moody. This guy, I mean, could he be more? He literally has one leg. Like, you just replace one of his eyeballs and you're all done. Yeah, this guy wanders in. He just goes by Stanley. And he has, like, this overcoat on and, like, 3 shirts under that, 2 scarves. Like, he just looks like a hobo. And he is very gruff. His hair is standing on end. He explains, he says, I'm your mentor. Just comes out and says it to Penny. And Penny is like, yeah, I didn't ask for a mentor. And he says, I don't give a shit. You are what you are. So I'm here. And Penny starts to argue with him about what the whole deal is with being a traveler. He says, honestly, there is no ability that has more power and possibility. Stanley is saying this to Penny. And Penny interrupts and says, I get it. It's an amazing gift. And he says, it's a terrible life-destroying burden. So I'm here to explain to you what could happen and keep it from happening to you the way that it happened to me. And he explains that he accidentally zapped himself over to Mount Everest one time, and in doing so, got stuck and lost his leg to frostbite, and was only, like, he's only alive now because there was a Sherpa who did not understand what this guy was doing here, who helped get him down off the mountain. And he says something about astral projection, and Penny's like, I don't watch Star Trek. I'm like, dude, Penny, how can you be doing what you do and not have cracked a fucking book? Like, astral projection is not something that's, like, outside of the parlance of a lot of the average person. Like, that's not a specialized bit of knowledge. Where have you been, Penny? And he explains that there is a charm that he can wear that will keep him from actually traveling with his body to wherever. And he shows him the tattoo that he has on his neck. It looks like an anchor. It literally, the symbol it's more complicated and it's ringed by other symbols, but basically that's what it looks like, is an anchor on his neck. And he says it works by binding your body to earth so you can travel with your spirit, but you're like a ghost and you're not actually there and you can't actually touch things and nobody can see you, but you can see what goes on around you. And he's quick to be like, this is just to keep you alive. This is not meant to fix things because the voices that you have in your head are still going to be there. So this isn't going to do anything for that. But I'm just trying to, help you with this one problem for right now. So then we go back to Quentin, who is apparently looking into what you can do with your abilities after you get out of school, what kinds of careers you can pursue. And he says something to Elliot about how can you possibly come to this school and learn magic and then just go be a podiatrist? To which Elliot is like, dude, this isn't some like magical universe filled with missions and quests and all of these adventures to go on. We live in the world we live in, and you need to make a living and get by and be able to survive in a world with other ordinary people. That's the world. So maybe you can make something up that's very exciting for yourself, as an ordinary person also could, who doesn't have magical powers, but that's not necessarily going to be available to everyone or even what they want. Some of us just want to be able to do magic for fun, but also live a normal life in other ways. And I really like that, because it is just sort of a strange, like in the Harry Potter universe, there's all these magical job openings at the ministry, at different like villages that are sort of contained within their world that are not even accessible to muggles at all. But Brakebills feels like the only place, other than probably little pockets here and there created by specific magicians, it feels like the only place that isn't accessible to the world at large that they couldn't get into. Like outside of getting a job at Brakebills and staying there forever, as far as we really know, unless you go into like a whole different world, which is not out of the question, if you're somebody like Penny, there isn't really going to be a lot of fantastical things going on once you're done with school, which is a really weird thought, But at the same time, how cool would it be to open up a practice as a podiatrist with magical skills to help heal people? There's of course going to be the risk of people starting to the word getting out that you're way too good at your job. So you have to be careful. But if you keep things small and move around, you could do a lot of good. And if you chose the medical profession, or there's any number of things in which having magical abilities, you would be able to help a lot of people or do things that are really special without necessarily going whole hog wandering around in robes with a long bushy beard. Let's see, impress a good mentor and you won't have to worry. And Quentin says, how am I supposed to impress anyone? And Margot says, when you're not impressive, glad you asked. And this is when she looks over at Elliot and he's like, oh, welters. And Margot explains that this game was created to keep students from killing each other in duels because they like to show off. Of course they would. They like the competition between the houses, and they like to be able to stretch their muscles in ways that they can't in the classroom. But it really is kind of a smart idea, You use magic to take squares. It's terrible. And I love the whole way. Elliot really doesn't like it. Quentin says it sounds kind of fun. He responds with, it's boring as death, to which Margot turns to him and says, you're boring. And he says, you're boring. Can I just say that Elliot and Margot are delightful? I know that they're meant to be delightful, and sometimes I have a really defiant reverse reaction when I know that a show wants me to like a character so much, or a pair of characters, and I just start to be irritated because I'm I get it, they're whimsical. But these two, I genuinely enjoy a great deal. Just their weird sort of their relationship feels like it's romantic right up until the point where it's definitely not between the two of them. You know what I mean? And she says, it was supposed to be a surprise, but I like ruining things. Best line ever. So good. I really laughed at that. And yeah, she explains that the mentors are going to be watching, so please don't screw this up for me. No pressure. So we go to Quentin Practicing, and I cannot tell you how goofy these finger movements look. Like, I just can't with them. You know, I understand what they're doing. I'm not even like disliking the idea of using your fingers to cast and specific movements meaning certain things. It's not even that. I think that it's whenever Quentin is doing anything, I hate it because it's him. Because Julia is doing the same thing in other scenes when she's practicing with Marina. And even though it did look a little goofy, it was still kind of fun, you know? Just watching him do this thing, I was just like, stop it, shut up. You know, Quentin, no, you look like an idiot, go sit down. Like, I hate him so much, you guys. Every time he's on screen at this point, I'm just like, I hope this black hole swallows you and leaves your chair empty and nobody ever knows where you went. And yeah, in this scene, it's like he has somehow created this tiny black hole that he is trying to hold open. And Alice comes in to talk to him and distracts him, and it disappears. So we get like the very beginnings of the spell that it seems like he wanted to work, but couldn't quite. And it's supposed to give us a hint later on as to the fact that the thing going on with his dad has lent him some sort of power that he didn't previously have access to. Because she brings in the message that his father is sick. And then we cut to the credits. This is a really long cold open. And go to him with his father. And, you know, the whole vibe between the two of them is really, really weird. The guy who is playing his dad, his name is Spencer Garrett, and I know he's been in other stuff, and he was in something where he was a huge asshole. So I have this reaction to him that isn't unrelated to him in this, where I just dislike him because he played somebody who was, I think, maybe like abusive or something. But yeah, it's not saying like I'm looking at his little like IMDb summary here, and it's all TV shows, and it's nothing that's ringing bells for me. But he's explaining that he feels mostly fine. There's some dizziness and headaches, but otherwise he really would never have thought that things were as bad as they are. And he tries to play it down. And Quentin asks, have you told Mom? And he's like, well, no, I keep trying to make up excuses, but honestly, I just don't want to talk to her. So that's an interesting detail, that Quentin's parents are separated and not even speaking for whatever reason. And I don't know what that's about, but I would like to know. And he tells Quentin that he's worried about him. He's just like, I don't know what's going on with you. I know that you are going to school for finance because I sort of probably pressured you into doing it. But I'm realizing, as I'm sort of facing my mortality, that I pushed you towards doing all these things that were not you. And I'm realizing that you're going into this business that you probably don't even like because you're trying to please me or live up to something that I have pressed you into being. And I don't think that this is where you're supposed to be, but I didn't see it until now. And Quentin's sort of arguing with him about like, well, I know you think you know me, but I'm not a kid anymore. To which his dad is like, yeah, go ahead and dump that bag out that you're carrying with you, and we'll see if there isn't a fillery book in your bag. Which I have to say I really enjoyed, because it's a really common, and I'm not even saying that this is untrue, but there's a real common trope in a lot of stuff that parents don't know their kids at all or misunderstand them or whatever. And I like that we're coming at this from, I used to misunderstand you kind of on purpose because I didn't like the direction you were going. But now I'm going to face up to the fact that I do understand you, and it's just not what I had thought I wanted for you. But I'm changing my mind and coming to accept that now. And that he is so right about this, because you can see the look on Quentin's face. Even if there weren't a fillery book in there, there's a bunch of books on magic at the very least, you know. And he then says to Quentin, by the way, you know that you're still on my insurance, right? A couple months ago, I saw that you checked yourself into a mental hospital. I didn't say anything to you because I respected your privacy and I knew that you needed your time to do your thing. But I also know that they're sending you prescriptions and you're not taking them. And I really appreciated this as well because Quentin's arguing about how I don't need them, I'm better. And his dad is like, look, whatever you're doing, I'm not trying to like yell at you about the way you're living your life. I'm trying to explain to you, I see from afar all of the shit going on in your life that I don't know about, that you don't talk with me about at all. That is pretty major, to be honest. And realize that we have such a bad relationship that you don't even want to like tell me this stuff or ask my advice or get any sort of support from me, because that's how bad I have been at this, that you don't expect any support. And he's basically trying to be like, I'm trying to apologize and notice things. And it's hard because Quentin's reaction is immediately like defensive. Like, so you're telling, because he says, I'm trying to fix what I broke. And Quentin says, so you think I'm broken? And he's like, no, our relationship is broken, not you. I fucked this up. And I want this to be different because I don't have a whole lot of time. And this is a real, you know, like, I don't know how many of you guys have had relatives that you had weird relationships with who then start to decline for whatever reason. But it is the kind of like, you have to make a choice whether or not you are simply going to accept that your relationship is not good and that it may never be good, or you do this sort of thing where you have your confessions and sort of decide how to move forward and be better before you have lost your chance. And depending on the people, either is valid. I don't really, like, I know that there's a lot of folks who are like, you need to fix what's going on between you and a person before they're gone because you'll always regret it. But the truth is, whether you fix things or not, you're going to have regrets when somebody dies that was close to you anyway. Like, newsflash, y'all, nobody ever dies and you're like, well, I was done with them and this is fine. Like, you can hate your parents' guts, but when they die, there is still going to be some weird conflicting emotion around it. You know, you can be even glad that they're gone and not going to be part of your life anymore in a way, because there are parents out there who are more than just toxic, who will just, guys, the stories I know from friends personally are just astonishing. And I really believe they'd be better off if their parents were dead. But that is not to say that the person who is, like, I can say that from the outside, they'd be better off with their parent dead. And even they might agree. But when you are in that moment, and this person is now gone forever, you realize that there has always been a part of you that low-key hoped you'd someday be able to like work it out or fix things, or that they would somehow come to realize what it was they did to you and admit their fuck up. And there's just no way around death taking things away from you. That's how it works. So I like the scene, and I like the fact that there's not any sort of real resolution to any of this at this moment. There's not even a feel of like Quentin really deciding whether he has agreed to this or not. But we cut to then a couple of scenes that are intercut with one another that are really, really funny. of both Elliot and Margot cornering Alice and trying to get her to put in a good word with her famous aunt to be their mentors. And each of them does not know, I don't think at this point, that the other is after the same, but they might know. And in any case, later on, he's making cupcakes to try and impress her. And she has gotten this like incredibly rare bottle of brandy or something that you can only get from like Nepal. I don't even remember. But it's basically something super rare and impressive. And she's like, really feels like she has the upper hand. And I can't help but laugh at Elliot being like, this is war, bitch. Because I love, like I said already, I love the two of them. I love the fact that they are competing for the same thing, but even as he says, this is war, bitch, there is still a loving sort of vibe to it there. I really, really enjoy that they can compete for the same thing, but not descend to hating each other, but still be competitive. That's a really tough thing to do, you guys. Like, I don't know how many of you who have had rivals in school. I have, and one of them was allegedly in high school my best friend, and I found out like kind of late in the game that she low-key hated me, and I didn't really know. I thought we were all right. Nah, it doesn't seem like we were all right. Like, it's a tough, especially, I think maybe what might make it better between Margot and Elliot is that they do seem like they're actually on even footing and they each have to really try. And I think what the problem was in high school was that I kept beating my friend, and that just starts to breed resentment, you know? But yeah, so I just really like this, and I am going to be, I mean, I understand that both of them got rejected, that her aunt is just like, you both seem very exhausting, I'm sorry, which was hilarious. But I feel like this is going to have to come up again, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'm just going to jump ahead and wrap on what happened with the with Penny and with this game and everything, because I only have like 15 minutes left, and I really, really want to make sure I talk about Julia for her dealie. So we have the game, and we see one of the kids that deals with the nature stuff. What are they called? We have the physical kids, we got the psychics, but I can't remember what it is that crew is called. And the first girl to go up fails in taking her square. And then Quentin is supposed to, and he is totally out of it, like just so focused on his father. And he had this moment earlier where he walked in on his dad vomiting. And so his dad just keeps trying to be like, this isn't that bad. It's just like, you know, but it clearly is kind of that bad. It's just not, the whole thing is his father really wanting to pretend he has more time than he probably does. And Quentin realizing that his dad has been downplaying it all, and that he needs to make a choice about how he's going to handle this because of how much less time he probably has. So, yeah, his dad tells him about, you know, that it's the most common type of brain tumor is the one that I have, and it's also the most severe. And I have decided that I am not going to get treatment. I'm not pursuing them. And Quentin sort of loses it at this point. This is the thing that sends him over the edge. And I have such mixed feelings on this sort of thing, because in the position that his father is in, he's not an old man, and he has a son. And for me, this feels really selfish. Like, I feel like you should, if you really are interested in repairing the relationship you have with your son, then you should take the treatment and extend your time here to increase the chances that you will both be able to have some peace. But at the same time, people's bodies are their own bodies and their decisions are theirs. And I can't even, you know, I can't talk about bodily autonomy and then tell people that they aren't allowed to, you know, decide that they are ready to die. And, you know, his argument is because of what these tumors do to you, after the treatment, I might not even be myself anymore. I could be a totally different person, which granted, that's terrifying. And I get it. But I really do feel like that's, everything is a risk. So anyway, he pulls out this board game and he's talking to Quentin about like how or it's not a board game. I'm sorry. It's a model. And it's this thing that he had built that Quentin broke. And he tried to fix it and it broke into like several more pieces. The more that he tried to fix it, he just kept ruining it. And this is what he is saying to Quentin about them. Sometimes trying to fix something only makes it worse. Basically, like, maybe it was a mistake to tell you that I want to fix things between the two of us. And Jesus, that's harsh. Like, dude, don't reach out and then be like, oh, we're like this plane that broke. Dude, stop it. What are you doing? His dad needs to think things through before he says them out loud to his child. So Quentin goes to talk to Dr. Mears because of his interest in the medical stuff that Mears was, sharing with him that she could do. And she says flat out, if we could cure cancer, why would anybody have it? And he says, because we like secrets. And she doesn't argue with that, but it is overly simplistic. And he says there's got to be some kind of spell. And she says, there's a lot that's possible, but cancer is actually a part of you in a way that magic cannot separate. Some people think it is magic and it's a curse that we can't break. And he's like, so that means somebody tried it. And I'm like, fucking duh, dude. Do you really think that you're the first person in the magical community who's come up against cancer? You don't even have it. It's a family member who has it. You think somebody in the magical community didn't have cancer themselves? Like, what are you talking about? Like, just that he is so short-sighted about everything in this. And she's pointing out that, like, the dean could have fixed his eyes, and he hasn't. And do you know why? The amount of energy that would take is insane. It's too high a price. And he's like, well, everything comes with a price. But she's like, listen, I can tell you some things to look at, but this is just all experimental. It is not something that has ever worked before. It very well may be impossible, and it's almost definitely going to require more energy than you can get by yourself. Like, there's just, it's likely that there is no way this is working. So then when we go to the actual game, it's sort of weird, actually. I find it really funny. The kids that are doing the plant stuff, their uniforms are like very different. The girls are all wearing these like sort of tracksuits, just like the guys, except one of them has hers down to like her knees, like this huge tunic dress. But then on the physics kids side, they're all wearing these like mini skirts and knee socks and whatnot, and it is pretty funny to me. And they look great, don't get me wrong, I love it. But yeah. And this is when Quentin decides that he's going to try this fucking like black hole thing. And he isn't in control of it. It's Alice who has to step in and help him to close the thing up again. But they win the entire board somehow because the power of that thing managed to wipe the whole board out. So the physics kids wind up, or the physical kids wind up winning the game because of his basically fuck up, which I just don't think is fair at all. He did not intend to do what he did. And I feel like that should be a factor. If it's not intentional and it totally flew out of your control, that is not skill. That is you being bad at it, actually. But whatever the case, Quentin starts talking to Margot later, and she is telling him, like, the reason you were able to do this is because of the pain from your father. You know where magic comes from. And he decides to start looking into these other spells. So he tries to cure the cancer puppy of cancer with a spell that nobody has ever been able to work. And yet, for some reason, he thinks that he can. And kills this adorable puppy. It's 150 years old. It's like, honestly, if I had magic, that's the kind of shit I would do. I would keep a kitten forever. Can you imagine? I love cats, don't get me wrong. But kitten forever is the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life. They are the cutest little... Oh, yes. And the fact that Quentin killed a puppy this episode, guys... Y'all know I already hate this motherfucker. He went on to kill a puppy out of sheer arrogance. Guess who is not getting back on my good side anytime soon? It's Quentin. He isn't. This fucking guy. Meanwhile, Penny is going through this fucking weird thing where he keeps hearing somebody call for help. And he finally manages to do this astral projection thing. And he winds up in a real weird place. Because it's this dungeon underground somewhere. Like, he is hearing this woman screaming for help, but it doesn't feel like she's nearby. But she has the same tattoo that his mentor has. And there's a sort of a scar over it, or a line through it, and I'm wondering if that, like, negated the power of the symbol or something. If it was like she was doing what she could to keep her body grounded and somebody sabotaged that somehow. But anyway, she's chained up, and there's lots of chains in this room. I mean, chains are basically the decor. And then the door opens and the beast comes in. And this woman doesn't detect Penny. She can't tell that he is there. And the beast doesn't seem to detect Penny immediately. But a second later, he turns and looks right at him. And Penny wakes up and he is flipped out. So he goes and talks to Stanley and tells him, "You fucking lied to me. You told me I was the first one in 35 years. And Stanley says, well, there was one a few years ago. And Penny says, yeah, I saw her. And she was part of that fucking third year class where everybody practically all disappeared. And I saw her chained up somewhere." Stanley is like, "Oh, really? I just figured she was dead." And really does not seem to care at all. Penny is clearly upset by this, which I find amusing because Penny just tries to project this whole air of not giving a shit. But it's moments like that where it comes through that he obviously really does give a shit. And he's just like mad. And Stanley gets up and says, "What the hell do you want from me?" Penny asks, "Can you get her back?" And he says, "Can I get her back? You're the one who fucking saw her. I have no idea where she is. Why don't you go get that tattoo as soon as possible?" Basically saying, don't you accidentally wind up there in body, because then whatever that thing is that got her is going to get you too. Which it feels like that might be what happened to her. That she might have like heard somebody calling for help and inadvertently headed there and then wound up stuck. Like she got caught. So, all right, let's go back to Julia. So I've been talking to you guys earlier about feeling like really Pete and Marina did Julia's boyfriend a favor. And I really still believe that. I am a huge fan of getting her poor boyfriend out of the picture. Because honestly, this dude is just bound for heartbreak, and he seems like a good person who cares about her. And that's just the worst possible scenario. It's just, this is not going to work out for him, guys. And she claims that she loves him, but then literally fucks Pete to get information out of him. Get out of here, Julia. How can you possibly, with a straight face, claim to love this guy and then fuck for information? It's not even that you're fucking somebody else because you really feel any sort of connection to them. This is a transaction for you. And I just can't understand how you can disconnect yourself like that and behave as if that wouldn't absolutely destroy your boyfriend if he found out about it. Just because it doesn't mean anything to you doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything to anybody. So Pete, he gives her information on how to get to this other crew. But when she gets there, it's obvious that they are not even remotely up to par. They have a book of really basic spells and shit that they have figured out way too late that she absolutely knows already in and out. And she's disgusted with the fact that she that she essentially went to the top of all the crews available in the city right away and got kicked out almost immediately and has sort of screwed herself. So she's talking to Pete about this. This is when she barges in, tries to get in and yell again at Marina. And Pete's dude, what are you trying to do? No. And then she goes and runs into her man at the coffee shop that he always goes to. And she sees that he didn't get her a scone. And she says, I tried calling you a bunch of times. And he says, wait a second. I'm sorry. Do I know you? I'm sorry. I think you have me confused for someone else. And she realizes what's going on. And honestly, I have to admit, you guys, that I don't even think she is as mad about this for the reasons that she is supposed to be. She's mad because they took some shit away from her in her life. She isn't mad because she lost the man that she loves. That is not the vibe that I'm getting at all. It is 100% a control thing. And I just don't see the grief from losing him specifically in her face. And I don't feel that that's a factor. What it is she is trying to prove to herself and other people that she can have her cake and eat it too. She wants to be able to do magic and live this double life while also maintaining a perfectly reasonable semblance of a happy home life by using magic to cook for him before he comes home and having this little fucking domestic picture. And the truth is she can't, and she doesn't even really want to. Her heart isn't in it. When she makes that dinner for him, she's in the middle of researching magic and shit when he gets home. And it's obvious that she doesn't really want to stop when he gets there. It's all done with this sort of grudging obligation. And I just wish that she would fucking admit to herself that she doesn't want it. They're doing you and him a favor, actually, by erasing his memory of you. And I just... I wish that she would just be more honest with her, because she's trying to say to Pete that he erased her boyfriend's memory out of jealousy because she wouldn't screw him again, because he sort of assumed that they were now in what's the word I want? That they were going to start a real, a fling affair together. And once he realizes that for her, she fucked for info and now she's done, she thinks that he's mad about that to the point that he'd erase her boyfriend's memory out of retribution. And he says, it was to save James from you because you're out of control. You want everybody's help. You want to stand on our shoulders, and you haven't ever taken any of our advice. No wonder they didn't let you into break bills. And him saying that, she like storms on out of there. And again, he ain't wrong. These people all know more than you, and you want access to all of the shit they have to offer, but you don't want to actually listen or learn anything beyond the power itself, which is completely secondary to everything. So anyway, we end with a scene between Quentin and Alice. And Alice is telling him that she is really sorry to hear about his dad, asking if they can fix him. And I forgot to mention, Quentin outs himself to his dad about his magic, which is not something that they're supposed to do, but I'm not sure if there's a specific like statute of secrecy sort of rule. But he repairs the plane in front of him. So that's a pretty big step, that he's trusting his dad and showing him that. And I'm very curious what's going to come of that. And he tells her he's glad that she came back, and she looks kind of touched by that. And in the end, we have the conversation between Katie, Penny, Alice, and Quentin about what it was that Penny saw. And he draws this like symbol that he saw somewhere. I think it was out in the hallway before he actually went into the dungeon room. And Quentin recognizes it and says, "That's Ember's seal. You were in Fillory." And that is the end of the episode. So, yeah. Dun, dun, dun. I guess we'll see what the fuck happens to this poor girl, because it's unclear why this dude even wants her. You know, I don't like the beast is obviously trying to question her, but like we don't know why. And he's taken a bunch of other people allegedly. So unless they did just die, I still maintain those two students from the other episode, though, that they say are like recovering in the infirmary were dead. I do not think they were recovering. But anyway, I'm over time, so I'm going to wrap this up. But thank you, Jessie, for this commission. I'm really enjoying how quickly these episodes are scheduled together so that I can really like plow through them. It's a lot of fun. And I hope that you guys are enjoying the coverage as well. So until next time, toodaloo, motherfucker.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.